Door number 8 by Francis Rosenfeld. Door number 5. Splintered Self. When she came back inside, through the kitchen, no less, she got this weird feeling that she couldn't pinpoint, that she had gone off the edge of reality altogether, and it took her a while to realize why. It was as if she had walked inside a hall of mirrors. There were multiple hers everywhere, wearing different outfits, sporting different attitudes, discussing different topics, flirting, brooding, nursing their drinks, dancing, hiding, being the life of the party, displaying sparkling wit. The thing about the human mind is that it trains itself to be very efficient, so it automatically eliminates the events that have an extremely low probability of happening, so that the brain doesn't get burdened with useless information to the detriment of day-to-day activity. When these very rare events happen, the mind gets confused and resentful, trying in vain to reconcile what it thought it knew about the world with the new image that simply doesn't fit into that knowledge. Stepping into the hall of doppelgangers without warning definitely fit into this category for Taylor, so she wrapped her arms around the first reasonable justification that came to her mind, in order to discount whatever it was that she was seeing with her own eyes. I must be drunk, I never should have had that beer. She closed her eyes to make the image go away. Oh, don't worry, they don't really look like you, I just altered your perception of them to make it easier for you to notice. Her neighbor whispered behind her. Notice what? And how did you alter my perception? She asked, worried. That is a subject for another course. He answered the second question, and then directed her attention back to the crowd. Just observe them for a while, or should I say observe yourself. Walk around the room, you can't really see much from here. He pushed her forward towards a version of herself who had an animated conversation with another version of herself, dressed as a man. Well, Taylor thought. I lost my marbles for sure, but at least I lost them in an interesting place. How many people get a chance to see themselves from an external point of view? That outfit is definitely not flattering. She thought about one of herselves, who seemed tense and held an artificial pose. The attitude of that self screamed discomfort as she tried to listen to an intellectually stimulating version of herself debate a popular subject with enviable eloquence. Oh, how I wish I were that smart. She smiled at the image, surprised that the person in question still felt like her, and wondering why she never managed to see herself that way. Unfortunately, the next self she stumbled upon was an obviously inebriated version of herself, wobbling on her way to the bathroom. Not even in my worst nightmare? Taylor thought, revolted. I would never. How can that be? I would never do that, that can't possibly be me. She turned around to her guide for an explanation. Oh, but it is, you see. All of these people are you. Your aspirations, your judgments, your fears, your disappointments, your passions, it's all you, everywhere, reflected in the people you see, like in a hall of mirrors. See that friendly you who apologizes a lot? That's Christine. But Christine and I are not alike at all, Taylor argued. She loved her friend, but their personalities were very different. The thought of Christine as a reflection of herself simply didn't make sense to her. Why? Because you like to hide the part of you that wants to please everybody under that aloof exterior you so carefully crafted for yourself? He smiled. Are you trying to tell me that I'm a fake? She said, offended. No. I'm trying to tell you that all the aspects of you leave traces upon the world, not just the ones that you like and approve of. For instance, drunk you reflects your fear of making a fool of yourself in public, and the crass one over there, who is picking a fight over a tacky subject, is the result of your conflict avoidance complex. Are there any me's that I would actually enjoy being? She scanned the room for some version of herself she could be proud of. Actually, he started laughing, you would need a true mirror for that one. No, don't cringe, that's not a backhanded compliment. We all select to present the version of ourselves we are most comfortable with, and do our best to hide all the other ones. Unfortunately, we just think we hide them, when in fact we cast them upon others. But I wish I were as brilliant and eloquent as that girl over there. Taylor pointed to the one who had just finished her splendid argument on social issues. Of course you do, but you don't believe you could ever be like that, so you cast that unfulfilled wish onto another person. If I were to guess, there must be a few other buried desires of yours walking around this room. Let's see. The spoiled child who only has to ask in order to get anything she wants over here, the girl who gets all the attention right there by the window, the polished intellectual by the table, the life of the party who's friends with everybody in the middle of the room. He seemed really excited to pick out the hidden components of her personality out of the crowded room. Oh, dear. Do you really wish you felt confident enough to wear that revolting outfit? Of course not, she snapped. She looks embarrassing. Oh, okay, it's disdain then. You know, you really should learn to make peace with your emotions. There are way too many yous walking around. You're spreading yourself too thin. But I'm not any of these people, she protested. I'm afraid you are all of them, he said, with a degree of sincerity in his voice that didn't leave room for doubt. It's not that you are too many people, it's that your reflections have almost nothing in common. You can't pursue a goal when you're this conflicted. Maybe we can try to clear this room a little bit, say goodbye to some of the selves that don't do anything for you. Let's start with the judgments. You have plenty of things to ponder without burdening your mind with what other people should do. Agree? Taylor nodded and watched, to her surprise, as the crass girl, the one in the provocative outfit and the one who was stumbling towards the bathroom, picked up and left. A lot of other people left with them, and the noise in the room subsided to more tolerable levels. Much better, at least now we were dealing only with your opinions about yourself. Notice anything? Not really, I still can't find anything at all that these alter egos have to do with me and with each other. There is something, a very subtle trait that underlies all of these different personas, one that you learn to recognize in time. That's who you are. But what if I learn that I don't like who I am? She replied. Avoidance, a very common self-defense mechanism. You figure that if you never take charge of your own personality, the parts you don't like about yourself will simply disappear? Yeah, I was kind of thinking that. What's wrong with it? It's called social polish. I see you learned nothing from crass and petty you. She's still there, if you'll notice. He commented rather indifferent, and Taylor had to acknowledge, to her displeasure, that the loudmouth had returned and was causing a scene over an issue that, for any normal person, would have been too embarrassing to hash out in public. Until you understand that the dark sides of you also have a right to exist, you're going to be challenged by them constantly. Ready to do this without the training wheels? What do you mean? She didn't understand, but the meaning of the words was revealed when the people around her regained their original countenance. She could still see in them her own attitudes, aspirations, and insecurities, walk across the room and live lives of their own, independent of her person. So, you are trying to tell me that we spend our lives basically talking to ourselves? Not exactly, it's more like leaving emotional fingerprints on everything that surrounds us. What you feel about life reverberates in your being and gets reflected back at you, amplified. I can't possibly be responsible for what all of these people do. What about personal accountability? She protested. Oh, not for everything they do, just for the splinters of yourself that you unconsciously throw at people. They are not accountable for your concealed emotions, you are. But how would I know whose self-splinters those are? They could belong to anybody, from what you are saying. She asked, confused. It's quite easy, really. If you have a feeling or an opinion about the subject, it's yours. But what about the negative thoughts? She said. Nobody said that you're going to whip your soul into perfection. Sometimes just being able to notice that you leave fingerprints upon the world is good enough. It's getting late, Taylor thought, and started looking for Christine so they could leave. The latter was engaged in a pleasant conversation with Matt and Jessica, as if the three of them had always been the best of friends. I'll say, wonders never cease. And to think that you didn't want to stay, he replied. Don't tell me I had something to do with that. Not directly. Christine did. But you did touch Christine's heart. It's a little bit like a wave propagating through various media. It behaves differently in each one, but the intent behind the emotion always shines through. Huh? Taylor decided to abandon her quest for sophistication. You know, if you want to experience peace, be the peace, he said seriously. That must be the largest steaming pile I've heard in a while. Taylor decided she had had enough of the emotional fingerprints and the unconsciously distributed self and the soul waves propagating through social circles. I think I'm going to collect myself now from whatever poor souls I'm currently haunting and go back to my dorm. If you don't mind, I have actual things to do tomorrow. Wait a minute. Aren't you the Taylor who drank her beer despite the fact that she doesn't like it? Shouldn't you agonize over whether it is socially acceptable to leave right now? He teased. I see that at least some of yourselves have started cooperating with each other. Before you know it, you'll be able to congeal some real purpose. Since we were nurturing all of my feelings, good or bad, I don't mind telling you that I find your relentless and completely unjustified meddling into my life quite bothersome. While I appreciate your attempt to embrace your negative emotions, in this case I simply know that what you said isn't true. How do you figure? Because if it were true, I wouldn't have shown up as your teacher. We don't have a lot of time, we need to prepare for the next door, it's a tricky one, he explained, barely lifting his eyes from the notes he was shuffling through. You mean to tell me that the one I just went through was easy? Taylor protested. It depends on the person, it's easy for some, difficult for others. He continued perusing his notes, trying to extricate himself from the line of questioning. It didn't seem easy to me. She hung on to the subject, stubborn. Oh, very well, he conceded. Let's go over things quickly. What do you want to know? Nothing that I can think of off the top of my head, she said. And that's why I didn't want to waste time with this analysis. If you don't have any questions to ask, what is the point? He went back to his notes and made some corrections on one of the pages, with nervous strikes of the pen. These people, he complained, exasperated. You wouldn't believe? That doesn't give me comfort. She looked at the notes with trepidation, wondering what mistake inside them could send her spinning eternally in deep space. Comfort, she thought, that's funny, and started giggling against her will. Okay, here goes. I can't stand spoon-feeding people what they're supposed to be thinking, so I always strive to answer the questions they do have, but maybe in this case we can try some guidance, considering how many facets of your personality you thrust upon your unsuspecting world. The basic rules are: judge not, fear not, covet not, take nothing personally, listen when spoken to, assume nothing, worry about nothing, wish for nothing. But that's almost everything there is for a person to care about? What's left? Other than peace, love, and happiness? You. But you just said that I should embrace all my emotions. I said do not hide your emotions. Remember how you told me that it is impossible not to think? So, she said, pondering on how to formulate the question, you know how you said that some people who go through the doors decide to stay? In this case, what would that mean? Some people just decide to permanently assume the persona they find more desirable and live the rest of their lives wearing it like a costume, while others lose themselves, unfortunately, by casting all that they are on other people through their wants and fears, and they become hollow vessels that collect everything everybody throws their way. Why would anyone want to do that? Most people are unaware of it happening, but for the few who do it with full knowledge, you have to understand that want is a very powerful driver, almost more powerful than fear. There is always something you want, sometimes bad enough to give up everything for it. It differs from person to person, but it's always there. This is human nature, and it's not in itself good or bad, but your desire will become your master if you do not exercise restraint. Any desire. He looked at her sharply, and she was taken aback for a second, wondering what she'd done wrong. Even a noble and selfless one. Why not pursue that want, then, if it is the most important thing for you? By all means pursue it, but don't get trapped by it, because then it becomes your whole world, and you won't be able to see anything outside of it anymore. Nothing is that important, especially after you traveled a bit and learn how big, strange, and awesome existence really is. So, can I ever go back? She asked. To being 100 people? Sure. We do that every day, sometimes unconsciously, sometimes against our will, but I strongly recommend reducing the number drastically if you want to be able to focus on anything. What if I want to do it intentionally? He paused for a second, trying to find the best way to respond. I would be very careful with that, because projecting yourself in someone else's mind is like entering their home. If you are invited, your presence there is welcomed and eagerly anticipated, but if you are not, you're like a thug breaking and entering, you do damage to the other and bring hatred upon yourself. Now, since many people do this completely unaware, they are exempt from these rules of conduct. You are going to tell me that this isn't fair to you, but I'll remind you that life itself isn't always fair. If you know the law, you're held to uphold it. At any rate, if you choose to, shall we say, visit, provided you're welcome, remember not to leave your trash behind. The silence returned and he went back to redlining his notes and getting more and more aggravated by the grievous mistakes found inside them. Her curiosity got the better of her, and she tried to stretch out her neck and see what it was that was causing him so much righteous outrage, but she was sitting too far to be able to read anything. "Why is door number 5 here if we weren't supposed to go through it?" she asked, just to break the silence. "Oh, we could have gone through it both ways, but a little exercise wasn't going to kill you either. Good for the body, good for the soul." "Really? We could have gone there the easy way, but we chose to walk half an hour up the hill?" Which brings me back to my previous observation that when you really want something you tend to become oblivious to the other options. But I didn't even know this was an option. Hence the expression being oblivious to it, he clarified. "Have we exhausted the subject?" "I guess," she said tentatively. "See? I told you there wasn't that much to talk about." Christine was very enthusiastic about her relationship with Matt, which was unfolding splendidly, according to her expectations. She was the kind of person who felt happier as a part of a couple than alone, and she could barely contain her excitement about becoming a we, so she needed an audience for the verbal downpour, and Taylor was the perfect subject. Taylor never thought she'd feel so relieved to listen to the normal day-to-day details of life, and even if she didn't know Matt all that well, he seemed to make her friend happy, and for that she was grateful. She decided she owed Matt one for occupying Christine's mind to such a degree that the latter didn't have time to notice exactly how strange her own behavior had become, thus maintaining a small cocoon of normality and comfort in the middle of the wild shifts reality was playing around her. To this end, she listened to a 45-minute painstakingly detailed description of Christine's and Matt's exploits around town, the plans for their next 5 dates, the party they were throwing together, the matching knitted hats they found to wear on their next hiking trip, Matt's future plans, his favorite bands, foods, colors, sportive events, his religious beliefs and or lack thereof, his pet peeves, his fondest childhood memories. By the end of the presentation, Taylor almost felt like she and Matt had grown up together. She was a little distracted by the thought of what Matt would think if he knew he had become such a familiar presence in her life, so she failed to anticipate the examination mirror being turned on her for a reciprocating confession. "So, what's he like?" Christine asked. "What's his name, anyway?" "I don't know." Taylor answered both questions simultaneously. "Christine, I told you, we're not dating." "You know, if you don't want to talk about it, I understand." The latter pretended to be the greater person about this issue, and then her gregarious personality revolted against what she saw as a breach of trust. "You know what? No, I don't. I'm your best friend, Taylor. How can you keep this from me?" She then quickly analyzed the possible causes for Taylor's reluctance to talk about her new boyfriend, stumbled upon the first one that came to her mind and gasped protectively. "Is he controlling?" Christine grabbed her hand in a show of solidarity. "You know, I used to have this jerk of a boyfriend in high school. Don't encourage it, Taylor. It's not worth it. Let me talk to him, okay?" she offered in a tone that really wasn't asking for permission. "No," Taylor blurted out before she had a chance to get her emotional control back. "There is no need, Christine. I told you, we are not dating. We are working together on a school project." "Did I mention he made me wait for him in his office for 2 whole hours and never showed up? What kind of student counselor does that?" Taylor could think of a couple of reasons that would have made her neighbor unavailable at the time, none of which would have fared sane during this particular argument, so she nodded ambiguously and tried very hard to find another topic of conversation. Unfortunately, Christine was on a roll. "You know what scares me, Taylor? You don't even know this guy's first name. How do you not know a person's first name? It's the first thing people volunteer about themselves. What if he's a serial killer or something? I'm really worried about you." Christine remembered she was talking about her boyfriend's best friend and regretted the last statement. She had asked Matt about the guy and had gotten only vague answers too, first name included. The fact that Taylor shrugged off her question only served to amplify her curiosity. It was like this individual was mesmerizing Taylor and Matt somehow. She decided to take the matter in her own hands and find out for herself what she wanted to know when given the opportunity, and then she continued a rebuke of Taylor's behavior. "How can you, of all people, act so recklessly? That's not the Taylor I know. The Taylor I know needs to have everything wrapped up and under control." Ain't that the truth? Taylor's self-deprecating thought rose to the surface. Please promise me something, Taylor. Christine grabbed both of her hands in an imploring gesture. Next time you see this guy, ask him for his name, okay? For me? She pleaded. Taylor struggled a bit to release the grip on her hands and then reconsidered her approach. Okay, she said. You promise? You're not just saying that so I'll leave you alone, are you? Christine asked, probing her gaze for attempts to deceive. No, I'm not. Can we please talk about something else? Taylor asked, eager to change the subject. The conversation returned to the details of Matt and Christine's party next weekend, and her concerns involving Taylor's safety and well-being were drowned by her own interests, plans, and emotions. They left the room together, even though they had different schedules for the afternoon. Christine was going to meet Matt at the cafeteria, and Taylor had to do some research for her homework and was planning to hit the library and spend the rest of the day there. That way, in case fate decided to strike again at 4 o'clock, she would at least have an alibi if asked where she'd been. We may stop by the library later. Christine crushed her nascent hopes, as if she'd read her mind. We need to check out some books too. She smiled apologetically, because she instinctively felt that she was coming on too strong. Great. That means I'll have some splainin' to do if I happen to be unavailable at the time. Taylor crushed a few choice words between her teeth, cursing the unfairness of fate. I wouldn't worry about that, a familiar voice whispered from behind her. You've got to be kidding me, Taylor mumbled to herself. What a spectacular sense of timing this guy has. Oh, look at that. What a coincidence. Christine took the initiative. I heard so much about you, I was looking forward to getting to know you better. Matt, why don't you introduce us? Hi, I'm Matt's girlfriend. She volunteered eagerly. Nice to meet you, Taylor's neighbor replied, shaking her hand. And what do we call you? Christine didn't relent. You may call me Mr. Bradford. He smiled politely. Most people do. That'll be the day. Taylor cringed, preparing herself for the inevitable conflict. Matt, Christine commented sarcastically, looking at her boyfriend. I didn't know that your friend came all the way from the 19th century. Wouldn't you be surprised to learn you might actually be right about that? Who's to know, really? Taylor's mind retorted. Listen, Christine said, obviously upset, we don't want to hold you guys up, you must be busy. Matt and I made plans for the afternoon, and we don't want to be late, do we, honey? She snuggled against Matt, who didn't mind it in the least. For a second, the two of them completely forgot about Taylor and Mr. Bradford's existence and eloped to a world of their own, where love was king. Does that mean they're not going to check up on me later? Taylor asked herself. Maybe we'll get the books some other day. Christine smiled at Matt in a daze, completely blinded to everything else around her. Ain't love grand? Taylor's neighbor commented, watching them leave. The sky could turn bright purple and they wouldn't even notice. Are we going anywhere today? She tried to get ahead of the daily challenge. No, I told you, the next door is a little more difficult. It requires proper preparation and an unencumbered mind. You are conflicted right now, not a good starting place. Why are you coming with me, then? To point you to the appropriate reading material. The library was quiet, almost empty, and the warm glow of the sunset coming from the large skylight above the reading room filled the hall with rosy orange light. The tables were covered with stacks of books the library attendant hadn't had the chance to reshelve yet. They browsed through the piles together, and Taylor's neighbor started pulling books aside, photography tomes mostly, marine life catalogs, sailing, seascapes, harbors in winter, islands. Why are we looking at this? Taylor asked. She felt uneasy when she was too close to water, the simple and direct explanation for this being that she had almost drowned as a child, following an over-optimistic assessment of her swimming skills. Underneath this straightforward explanation was a deeper, subtler fear, one that she couldn't put into words, but which made her pull back involuntarily, as if she had touched a hot stove. She wouldn't admit she was afraid of water, because that went against her commitment to being in control of herself and her immediate environment, so she just argued that she wasn't much of a beach person, a statement that sounded odd coming from a California girl. Because that's what was here, he replied, expecting this explanation to suffice. So, She attempted a smart aleck comment. If this table happened to be covered with baby books, we'd be studying them? Are you afraid of babies? He asked. How did you know about the water? Oh, never mind. She gave up, resigning herself to stop questioning the reason behind his actions, and delved into the pile of books he had pulled aside. The first book she opened was the Marine Life Photography Catalog. Extraordinary close-up pictures of large fish and sea mammals look back at her with the low-level curiosity with which us humans watch the wildlife in our backyards, aware that it's there but not involved with its existence at all. A giant sea lion stared her down from behind the glossy page and increased her discomfort. As far as Taylor was concerned, the underwater environment was as virtual as the picture the shiny creature belonged to, a world that you can know about but never enter, a place forbidden. The sea lion looked very comfortable in its skin, and this irritated her. Between the broken lock on her door, the uncontrollable intrusions on her life, and the cold, drafty halls of her brand new school, her current life afforded her no comfort, and she resented any being, human or otherwise, who had the gumption to be so at ease in its habitat. Why was he happy, anyway? It's not like there was any shelter in the middle of the godforsaken ocean. You're always out in the open, exposed to what dangers may come, having to swim all the time, which was no doubt exhausting. What was there to be happy about? As the sun set, the large skylight above the reading room turned lavender, then deep purple, then jet black. The airy space below it, nestled in the atrium at the heart of the edifice, turned cold and drafty. A sudden chill went through her bones and she shuddered, as if touched by a ghost. You never know. Her neighbor commented, many souls have loved this place. It is not inconceivable that some decided to make themselves at home here. She looked at him to see if he expected her to respond, only to realize that he hadn't said a word. That's it? I'm going nuts, Taylor thought, and then rationalized that nobody could remain sane after all of the things that happened, but had to admit that sane, normal, felt confining to her now. It reminded her of how shocked she was, when she revisited the village where she used to spend her summers as a child, to notice that the place had retained its charm, but seemed to have shrunk to the scale of a toy. Her eyes returned to the picture, from which the sea lion was smiling at her. She shook off her upset. Being unsettled by the photo of an animal took the cake as far as irrationality goes. What was she going to fume over next? The potted plant in the lobby? She closed the catalog and tried to pay attention to the other books, but the sailboats and the fishing stories didn't really resonate with her. That night, when she went to sleep, she dreamed that the sea lion had decided to pay her a visit, and was anxiously circling her room in search of a place to make itself comfortable, but was unable to find it.